Technology at its best. Hello, everyone, and good morning to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 265. I am one of your co-hosts, as you can see, of many, and we also have a special new co-host with us, Mr. Richard Farrar. But let me introduce everyone very quickly through the roster. Mr. Richard Farrar is in my upper corner, like in Hollywood Squares. Adele Goodman is over to my stage left, who is the founder of Aspire. Yeah.
Welcome to the founder of Aspire Communication Marketing.
I almost got far enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the blooper reel. The show comes later.
The show is the blooper reel. We know this. Also with us is Mr. Ben Hanley from 3 and 6. Stephanie Sparks Smith, with Cogwheel Marketing. Mr. Tim Peter with Tim Peter and Associates. And Dan Waxman with Sasato.
Yeah, I just made that name so you can.
I just remember the Phil Collins song. Studio. You know, as long as I remember that song, I kind of remember it a little bit. But thank you all for joining the show for us. I'll ask Cameron if she wants to get in. And Dean is having camera issues, so he'll be back in a few. So we'll have a couple more co-hosts with us as well. Robert gave us an early present. He gave us 10 minutes to review his list this week. Woo!
Yay!
I have a show and tell topic that I want to bring in whenever it comes to appropriate. It's called Security and Getting Hacked in Facebook Business Manager. Class 101 on how that happens and what to do to avoid it.
There you go.
It was a painful week, my friends, a painful week. So with that in mind, Richard, since you are I know you've been with us many weeks and you've watched us many times and you've been patient as to the chaos that you view, I thought I'd give you the first crack at what it is you might want to talk about, and then we can dive into anything else afterwards.
Well, you know, I used to work with Marriott. Now I'm a consultant, and it just seems like the elephant in the room, of course, continues to be our industry. And you know, when you look at the Smith Travel information, it says 50%, you know, nationwide, United States occupancy. When you look at the data, though, most of that's coming from the smaller hotels. These large big boxes are going to be crippled for quite a while. So to me, that sort of becomes obvious the elephant in the room, because these big properties are the group house. They have a lot of associates. They're important to downtown cities. That to me continues to sort of be the thing that really bothers me. How those things can ever sort of get back. I think Ben was saying how, you know, there's some bounce back in Great Britain with travel and all and occupancy. I just don't see how that's going to happen for these big boxes that really are so important to our business. So that to me becomes the thing that bounces around. I know that you guys talk about a lot of things on here and jump around a lot. I think it did appear a bit in Robert's note that came out 10 minutes ago about, again, how, you know, the winners and losers are it looks like size matters and location matters a lot.
Yeah. If I can add a quick thing to that, I saw a new research just yesterday that comes from a very respected source. I can't reveal it yet because it will come out in a week or so, but I can talk about what they found. And they were talking to people who travel for business and when they thought they might be traveling for business again. And the numbers were Q1 2021, the number was 6%. Q2 2021, the number was 8%. Q3 2021 was 26%. And Q4 2021 was 44%. And what I thought was really striking about that was you were talking the end of next year, and we still haven't reached 50% of people having confidence that they will be traveling for business at that point. You know, obviously there will be pockets, there will be places where we see some boost and things like that. But I think you're exactly right, Richard. The group houses are going to have some troubles for some time to come. And that's something that, you know, we're really going to have to watch for as we go forward. Because if the demand isn't there, you know, what else can you do, right?
So is your source fuel? It's another survey by Fuel, isn't it? That's what you're talking about.
It is not a fuel survey. It is.
You sure?
From
Just double check it.
It is from an economics research firm, and that's as far as I can go with that at the moment. I
That's,
think
that's as far away from fuel as it's ever going to be. So, absolutely.
but it's something that, you know, the advice that I'm giving to clients. So, you know, obviously I consult with clients, and the advice I'm giving clients right now, and I would give anybody, you know, nobody has to pay me for this because I don't think this is particularly brilliant, is we should all be planning for this to be much, much longer, planning for the worst and hoping for the best, and doing what we can to try and capture demand and capture a fair share of business in the places where it does exist. But assume that this is going to go on for a long time. And then if it doesn't, that's a win. But if you assume this is all going to be fine in Q2 of next year, and it's not, you're going to be in a much worse position. So the right thing to do is assume that the nightmare scenario is true, and then anything good that happens is an automatic win for you.
But
I don't mean that to be
independent
negative, just to be
hoteliers-
practical. Sorry, Adele, please.
Hoteliers, sorry, they can't wait that long, especially if you're in a hard-hit urban area
sure.
like New York City. There, you know, people, if things don't start to come in enough to at least break even, you know, a lot of people are just not going to make it, and their
Right.
long, hard work and all the years that they've put in, and employing so many people. You know, TripAdvisor says that there are 511 hotels in New York, but really, supposedly, it's actually quite a bit more. But that's what we would consider, you know, a hotel. And you know, people say it's going to be 20% down, but it could easily be much more.
If you think about it, I mean, it was sad to see the notification that Hilton Times Square was shut down permanently. We're going to see an obituary list continue to grow. You know, and we're in budget season. Maybe that'll get changed in the world now that we have the world that we're in. It'll be a budget week. It'll be a budget holiday, whatever. But part of the consideration that I know that we're including in what we're doing is a comp set deterioration format. Who do we know is financially stable still within our organization to maintain their presence in market? And I say to that also is I've also challenged all the ownerships that I'm working with on what is your perception of minimum threshold gain. They're still measuring things in my mind, old formatting of profitability margins. I gotta say, right now, I think it's more of survivability options and margins as to what is your base threshold of operational capability. What are your lesser degrees of, you know, to quote the Matrix, we can survive at lesser levels of living. You know, what is it that we're doing that we can survive at to maintain not having a dead box sitting on a corner of a street? And what does that really translate to? Not about a profitability margin, but about sustainability. Can you refinance your fixed over? You know, get your finances at this point. Is there those things need to be considered now? You know,
Or
rather
can
than
you take
when we're in desperation.
You know, one property owner that I know has already committed to the fact that they are taking and again, I can't say who this is at the moment, but they are taking the property out of service for most of next year. They are actually accelerating a capital reinvestment plan that they had scheduled for 2024, and doing the refurbishment of the property and updates to the property now, because their belief is occupancy is going to be sufficiently low. They're going to draw on capital reserves that they have to do the refurb, to do the reinvestment from that perspective, in hopes that when they're ready to reopen the doors in a bigger way in 2022, that the demand will have come back to a place where it can actually pay that off.
They're lucky to be in this position.
They are lucky to be in that position, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of a deal they would have got from the construction industry as well. Let's be honest. It's not just the hotel industry that's been hit. I know there's some pockets of the construction industry doing very well. I remember reading a report saying that there are still hotels actually being built right now. Understandably, you're at the point of no return if you don't just give up halfway through building a hotel if there's been that much investment put into it. So if you are lucky in that situation, it might be quite a wise investment to be going down the refurb route now, because you might save yourself. You're not necessarily saving yourself money. You're actually perhaps losing money and getting a better deal out of it.
Well, I tell you, it's strange you say that. I have two cases. One that justifies exactly what you're saying. There was a hotel here in downtown Fort Myers, Florida, that was near completion and opening. Matter of fact, they're supposed to be opening next month, finally. after a lot of mitigation, a lot of issues, lots of problems, anything, but they were committed to getting it open. There's just no demand. They're connected to the conference center. They just spent millions upgrading the conference center. But then up the road in Punta Gorda, a massive development was being done. The city gave up their most prized parcel of land. It was a corner slot by the bridge on the water overlooking the Gulf, a huge tract of land. They got all the concrete up, and now it's dead stone cold for 3 years. Stopped. There's 6 massive cranes sitting over it, and they're all dead. And I don't know whether they're going to take them down or whether they just have a full out lease that they got to finish with or what, but that whole thing dead. The whole economy is going to be based on that as the hub for that growth and that whole market. And it's just dead stop.
It's going to look like. Sorry,
Since we're doing the litany of bad news, if anyone saw the unemployment numbers that came out this morning, by far the hardest hit industry, as will shock no one on here, was in fact the lodging and hospitality market, which is unemployment is 25%, is down 25%. You know, it's the largest job losses, you know, and the one that's by far the hardest hit. So this is, you know, Adele, to go back to what I was saying before, and I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are in a lot of trouble. I think the reality is we have to look at that with, you know, clear, cold eyes and say, if that is in fact the case, what do we do to, as Lauren says, survive? What do we do to get through? Or what do we do to make sure, you know, we're putting ourselves and our people in the best position for the longer term? And some of those are going to lead to some very hard, very difficult, very challenging choices. But I don't think it's realistic to assume that there's going to be a big boost in demand for those kinds of properties, you know, immediately.
We have a unique opportunity with Richard with us because Richard's been behind. He's been in the room wherever it happens. The room wherever it happens. Okay. Sorry, anybody's not a Hamilton fan. Sorry. You've been behind those. You've been behind those high-level discussions back in the day when things hit, when 9/11 hit, when 08 hit. And from a Marriott or any brand perspective, you can generalize it, I would say, but what kind of level of discussions are going on back there that are like, how is the long-term play of this? What is the scope of what they're considering in that process that says, okay, this is our forecast, this is the reality. What are some mitigation things that we can start planning for now? What are some bricks in the stone that we can start building with? And then explain the universe and give 2 examples. Just saying.
Not to put him on the spot. He really likes to put people on the spot with multi questions.
How often do I get to ask one of the guys that was like, I always look at him, oh my God, he runs like the world.
No, I think you'll find that's girls. Whilst Richard's come up with his answer, Tim, those statistics he mentioned there, the unemployment, what's the situation in the US with the paycheck protection program? Are they the unemployment statistics despite the PPP payments coming through?
The PPP payments have ended. So they're beginning a new program where the federal government is giving $300 a week to the states, and the states can match up, can add an extra $100, I believe it is, to make it $400 a week. I think there's about 40 states or 38 states or something like that that have participated in that. But that is the situation.
Have you know that the PPP is a great program? We have a gentleman down here that owns a metal sheet roofing company. Bought a $700,000 catamaran boat, a $1.2 million house, straight from the account that he put his PPP money in. Matter of fact, it was the only money in that account that he pulled it from. So the feds are kind of talking to him.
Look,
as they rightfully should. Right.
A man's got to live, and who can't live without a $1.2 million yacht? I mean, I know I certainly couldn't.
Where would you put it?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think one of the interesting things you're seeing is the, you know, the STAR numbers include closed property, don't include the closed properties, right? They're artificially inflated for so when these properties come on back online, if they ever do, you're going to end up seeing a dip there as well. But the thing that concerns me more so sort of than the management companies and that is the actual ownership and the default of all the loans that are about to happen. I read an article recently that said the CMBS loans, which back a lot of the hotel loans, is looking at a default rate of something like 39, 40%. So that's where you're going to see the pain.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and
I'm the guy that sort of started this. I'm the guy that sort of started this downward conversation. I didn't mean to be the doggy downer. I guess to try to be more positive about it is that I think the 100-room hotels, they still need help. But to me, if a think tank like this can try to figure out how, marketing and digital and all that can try to not fix, because if you're a 1,000-room hotel, you've got a lot of rooms to fill. But, I think there's some Four Seasons that are talking about they're trying to do a lot more of those small weddings. Certainly, it's probably a lot more work for 10-person weddings than 100-person weddings. But those are the things that I think that everybody's sort of got to figure out. How do you move into this other world and sort of, it's a smoke and mirrors or glue or tape or gum kind of solution. But that's where I think, we, or at least as a consultant, that's my job, to try to help people try to figure out how do you get to that, so you can at least make your payments and keep a few employees on and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I make a comment with everybody is, if it's only 50% occupancy and 50% survivability, I want to be on the side that lives. So if I have to take business from everybody else to be that 50
to cancellation fees and non-refundable rates, and in a world where that doesn't exist anymore, and even the airlines who are the fathers of that, right, have understood that that's not something that they can continue, at least for the foreseeable future. So I mean, that's one thing we should not be doing.
Mm-hmm.
IHG is ending their flexible policy, and they're going to start having cancel, prepaid non-refundable and mean it starting October 1st.
Well, I wonder if they're going to see less occupancy then.
And I was going to say, I bet there are a lot of franchise sales folks right now who are making calls on a lot of IHG properties saying, hey, guess what we're going to do is keep giving guests flexibility because it's the right thing to do. And, I think there's going to be a lot of owners who are going to say, talk to me more about this, because, this sounds like something they're trying to do for one set of their ownership who's upset about the fact that they're losing out on those fees. But there's a far bigger set of ownership who's like, I need to put some heads in beds. And if I don't give guests flexibility, they're not going to come here. So,
but they always have the option of simply not offering a prepaid non-refundable rate. They can just offer one rate only if they want to, the best rate of the day, and that's it. But they, and also the consumer has a right to choose the regular rate and not the prepay rate. But if the hotel says, you know what, it would really mean the world to me to be able to know that you're really actually coming, and I'll give you 20% off of that regular rate that I would have given to anybody else if you are committed to me, because I need to know that I can pay my staff.
Yeah.
And so it's up to the consumer to choose what rate plan and what the rate conditions are.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And
I think
as
what
long
they're
as
trying to
we're
do,
communicating authentically.
I think they're trying to elongate that booking window. We've seen these really, really short booking windows, right? So they're trying to incentivize people to book a little bit farther in advance, so you're not sweating bullets on day of wondering if you're going to pick up 5 rooms or 50 rooms. It's been destroying most of our hotels operationally. Because we've gotten into a routine where you just expect a lot of same day pickup, but it's really a hard thing to manage at the hotel. So anything you can do to spread it out, get them on books a little bit sooner is a great idea. Is anything.
Again, this is the consumer world that we're living in now. This is the choice that we've given consumers, and to change it again so soon whilst this is going on, it's a risky move. I'm speaking,
especially if you're, and I apologize for cutting in for 1 second, Tristan, but especially if your market becomes a hotspot the day before the guests arrive. Right.
The exact point I was just about to make. Over here in the UK, we've had huge scrambles of people who've flown out of country. They've gone to France, and then the government has said, Monday, France COVID cases have risen, so Monday you're going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back. So thousands of people who've gone on vacation over in France are thinking, oh my God, I need to get back. And there was just a mad scramble of people trying to get back in before the deadline. So people could go back to work and not miss, and not miss, and actually miss the 2 weeks quarantine that came in. It's so there's not a cat and hell's chance if you're then gonna say, like take France for an example. You say, yeah, we're gonna have non-cancelable policies. Good luck. We're not going. See you later.
Yeah,
You know
and
what, though? If I were in, let's say, Myrtle Beach or one of those locations that is, really attracting a lot of visitors and getting up to 100% occupancy weekend after weekend, do you really want that to collapse just before and have, and lose, 10%, 20% of your reservations at the last minute? It would be nice if you're in that wonderfully luxurious position that very few hotels are in to offer that. But as a, brand-wide policy, I don't know if it makes sense, but I can understand that they want to give flexibility to those few hotels that have those circumstances where they want to not fall apart a day or two in advance.
which I fully understand. I just always go back to, if you do what's right for the customer in the long run, you're putting yourself in a better position. And if you're doing what's right for the operational stability of the hotel, and when I mean operational stability of, we're going to lose a couple points or 10 points on this night. And this is going to be unpopular with a lot of people who watch this show, I'm sure, because I'm incredibly sympathetic to the realities you're dealing with. But you have to do what's right for the guest in the long run, because that's how you're going to build a sustainable business as we live through this period. If
At
it's
the end of the day, I agree with you completely.
yeah, I mean, that's the place where things get back into a very, and it's a tough choice, right? It's a very tough choice. If it is the difference between you paying your mortgage and not, obviously do what you have to do to pay your mortgage. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that. However, once you know you can pay your mortgage, then you got to do what's absolutely best for the guest, because that's the only way you're going to put yourself in a longer term.
Yeah, and I also
position.
agree that it's just too soon.
Yeah.
It's simply too soon.
So, in taste of what might eventually be coming up in the future between Dean Schmidt and Stephanie Smith in the Battle of the MetaSearch discussions, we might actually have a special event for this. I'm actually thinking we should have a special event for, and in this corner, weighing in.
The Rocky music. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah,
Just saying, it's going to be a fun one. But there was a
Fun.
point that was made of it that I would like to ask, because I do have Richard with us and Stephanie, of course, is the brands missing an opportunity by not expanding on their points, rewards, points, incentives, points, values? Stephanie, you made the point that the corporate traveler or the points-driven traveler is not really traveling. Okay, and it's a valid point, of course. But by the same token, it is a tool that nobody else has. And that is a reward-value relationship that you can expand upon by having that with them. Is brand having the possibility that maybe by saying, do this and we'll give you an extra, we'll double your points or add extra, because that function, I'll tell you honestly, right now in one brand, not Marriott, but in one brand, doesn't exist. You can't do that unless you're a new opening hotel, that you can do points bonusing, unless you do it as a package, which makes it really painful because anyway. But so what do you all thought? Is that a missed opportunity, or is that just something that just doesn't seem like it's a useful tool?
I guess I'll have to give it some more thought. I will say what I have seen from on the point side of things is the redemption rate for a lot of those hotels in those destination markets. The redemption rate for using your points has been higher than normal. Where that hurts hotels is for you to be able to get your higher, and Richard, step in. I mean, you got to be able to get your higher redemption rate. You have to have a higher occupancy. So many of these hotels are getting hammered with their redemptions, but they're not getting a decent ADR for it because their occupancy isn't where it needs to be to balance that out.
Right. What do you think, Richard?
Well, I don't think business travel, I know we're not talking about business, but to try to lure people to do things they don't want, it's sort of like the old days when we said must stay 4. I think people really thought we could get someone to stay 4 nights instead of 3. That wasn't the thing. We were looking for people that wanted to stay 4 nights. So I don't know that you can overly incent. I don't know at what point in time, that tipping point when it gets people's attention. I think they claim that till you get to 20%, most people don't get too excited, blah, blah, blah. So, and then I think there are those people, maybe they can look in their databases and see the kind of people that have been motivated in the past by deals, but a lot of people, if you're scared, you're scared. I don't think points are gonna. I don't think doubling my points right now. I'm not going to get on a plane. I'm not. I don't. You can fly on a lot of airlines right now for $25.
Yeah.
You can't get in an Uber for $25. I'm not getting on an airplane for anywhere. So I don't. There is a point. I don't know. I forget elasticity, inelasticity, whatever. But there's a. I just don't think you can lower the price or lower the points or double the points enough for certain people. You could probably move the needle a little bit, but not a lot, in my opinion.
And some of the brands have been running. Marriott had a pretty healthy Bonvoy offer that they ran, I don't know, 2 months ago, and we actually saw a bigger pickup on that Bonvoy promotion than we've ever had on any other brand specific promo. And I can't really speak to why it performed better, but most of our hotels did see a higher, pickup rate, which kind of goes against the grain of what you see and what you see who's traveling. But most of the,
did it pick up the entire level of the occupancy of the hotel, or just that one rate plan? Maybe people pick that rate plan and less a different rate plan that they might have chosen otherwise.
yeah, but to get that promo, you would have had to been an existing Bonvoy member before all this happened. So,
Yeah,
and
I
you
always
might want to
judge
remember
things like
that I would.
live for the whole hotel, because sometimes I'm just moving something from one package name to another. It's just
Yeah. The other thing about some of these people that have a lot of points, I'm going to make some generalities here. More likely they've been in business a long time. More likely they're not young people, and that's the person that probably doesn't want to travel. I think again, you got to go back to trying to figure out. I would think most of the people traveling today are younger, because the older people are worried about 81% of the deaths are people 65 and older. So I think if you can, again, is Marriott really, or Hilton, got a bunch of 25-year-olds that are traveling? Maybe that's why Airbnbs, 6 months ago, everybody thought those were not going to do anything. Now they're starting to ramp up much more so than hotels. Is that because younger people are traveling and they're not, and that's what they sort of like anyway, and that's who's traveling? I think you got to get into the age group, the demographics a lot, and some of the psychographics, but a lot of the demographics to put some context to all the stuff we're talking about, because making it one generic thing is probably a little unfair, because this thing's so age spooky.
So I know that the math probably doesn't work on this from the brand perspective, but it might be a good opportunity to build brand and build loyalty, to go back to these, the people who have the points and give really good redemption rates. So I'll give you an example. I'm in New York now. When I get out of quarantine, my plan is to book a hotel. I have a ton of IHG points. I have a ton of Marriott points, but they're charging the same or more for redemption as they do during peak periods. So why am I going to do that? So it's not making me more loyal to that brand. It's not making me want to stay there. Well, I might try a hotel that I've never tried before. So they lose that aspect of it. Clearly, they want to get paying customers in there. I understand that. But there is an opportunity to build the brand and build the loyalty.
That's a really good point, because and the people who were traveling, who have all those points, they were traveling once a month, twice a month, spent a lot of time in hotel rooms. They're not traveling right now, but they've got all these points. So they've been waiting all summer for that opportunity to travel, because let's admit it, all of us are sick of sitting at home. And so, and in fact, case in point, I'll tell everybody, by the way, it is my wife and I's anniversary this weekend, 16th wedding anniversary. And so we are taking a trip into a Drive Market, Omaha, Nebraska, not too far away. And I'm using points for it, right? So now all those points that I've had sitting around, I'm not business traveling. So yeah, I'm going to use those points now all of a sudden. But here's what's interesting about that. I'm going to a hotel that I wouldn't have normally gone to. So that has that opportunity now for that hotel to become my go-to hotel next time I'm heading back to town. So even though that may be the case, there's still an opportunity, I think, to get some loyalty for people who before weren't going to the Drive Market. They weren't going into Omaha. Instead, I was going to Miami or whatever it may be. But now I can become a client of that hotel and a returning visitor on a future trip.
Dean, you normally have an awesome voice, but today you have an exceptionally stellar. Is it just me? But he's got that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
noticed that. I noticed that today.
I'm gonna get Dean to do the. I'm gonna get Dean to do the voiceovers for my commercials.
No, he's
Wow,
got
I always do voiceovers. Man. I always want to do voiceovers, but now today, especially, keep that voice. With us is straight from South Africa, Stuart Butler.
Today, mate. Today.
Stuart, may I introduce Richard Farrar? Richard Farrar, Stuart Butler.
I've been listening for
Hello.
about 30 minutes, so I've been keeping up with you guys, and I'm here to correct everything you said that was wrong.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think
Hey, I want to backtrack to that earlier
I
conversation.
don't think we have that kind of time, Stuart.
Go ahead, Dean. Sorry.
I'm going to go back to that conversation we have about the prepaid rates too, because another point to think about with those is there's a big difference between a prepaid non-refundable rate that you're doing through your Hotel Direct website and a prepaid rate that goes through an OTA. Because now, as Tim gave the example of, if all of a sudden the day before my arrival, that area turns into a hot spot, well, now what happens? If they booked direct with me, I can be proactive and contact them and say, hey, remember that prepaid rate that you had? You know what? We're going to forgive that. We're going to rebook you, whatever. I have control over that. If that was done through hotels.com, now suddenly they're controlling my narrative for me. And I want to own that.
Sorry, can you just say Adrian for me? Adrian.
Adrian!
There we go. Watch out, Stephanie, watch out. He's an ear biter. I know. Yeah, he's
Really? I just said he was a nibbler. No, it feels better.
So I think also a couple of the points with this is I can tell you that we've had one recent success story. The gift certificate cards. It's been an old conversation. It's something we've talked about earlier on into the COVID crisis of way of getting people to purchase now and potentially aspire to staying with you in the future. One of my clients did a very aggressive 50% additional value from $50 increments up, and the cap was $1,000. So technically, you buy 1,000 and get $1,500 worth of value for it, and what it did do, which was really nice, was, to your point, Stephanie, stretch the book window. And this is in Canada. So everything's closing in Canada. It's drive market only Canada. Even though they are getting some certain countries that they are allowing in, it's really pretty much domestic only. But there's a lot of domestic travel for them. People in Toronto who have been frustrated with their on and off quarantining. Vancouver's done exceptionally well, and people want to go there. So they've been very successful as targeting those markets and offering this gift card program. They had their best August, even year over year, and August is one of their better months. So, but that was from a purchase point of view. That wasn't from an actual in the month. That was from actual bookings and revenue gen. Gift cards are cash. The value proposition is a gift, but the actual purchases for the month of August were better than last year's because of the program. So there are ways to aspiringly connect to people in the hopes that they go. And also, I'd like to add to it. This past weekend, we tried to get away for a few days for the first time. Get out of the house, and we did Airbnb. Actually, we did our VRBO, to be honest.
How dare, Lauren? How dare?
I know, but I can see why it's better than what we offer as hotels. The density of people you have to engage, the hallways, the elevators, didn't have to do any of that. Didn't have to share common space. I had my own kitchen. We did our own cooking. We didn't go out or anything like that. Walked out to the beach, which is what we wanted to do. Had our own space on the beach, which is what we wanted. And that was a value proposition because we could talk directly with the host and get all the details of what are you doing for cleaning? What do you really have? Where is it that this is at? And so forth. And really, hotels just don't offer that at the level that we keep saying they need to.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to This Week in Vacation Rental Marketing.
I think there's a false narrative going on about that.
Yeah.
Right? Because we keep seeing reports that vacation rental is recovering way faster than hotels. And I think it's warped by the destinations that are recovering, not necessarily the type of accommodations. Because if you look at
Or the feeder markets where people are comfortable traveling.
or where they're
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a choice. And we just, I was actually right before this. The reason I was late is we were finishing up the analysis on our latest sentiment study. And one of the questions we asked, and keep in mind, we're in Myrtle Beach market. A lot of the people we're polling are coming to destinations like that, which tend to have a high percentage of vacation rental type units as well. But we started asking people, one, have they traveled? Yeah. And we asked it in a way, we said, have you traveled since March 30th, 2020, right? And any guesses what percentage of people have traveled between then and now? What would you guys say?
March
20%.
Okay.
10%.
25%.
All right, now let me ask you this: how many of you guys have traveled? Of the
Just now, just the first time now.
but you have traveled, right?
Oh, yeah, long time.
Who else is traveling?
A lot.
Stephanie's been a warrior.
We know,
so-
we know I've traveled a lot. So.
Lily's traveled, Stephanie's traveled, like more than 50% of us have traveled, right? And yet we're all sitting there saying, 7% of people have traveled, 10%. No, we actually just hit the tipping point. We had over 2,000 people respond. 50% of people that responded, is self-reporting study, have traveled since March. So we're getting to that.
Say that again, sorry.
50% of people have traveled since March 30th.
How do you define travel? Is it just overnight stay?
That was the question. Have you traveled? And then we broke it down and said, what type of accommodation did you travel, and what was the reason for travel? And we broke down the reason between things like I just needed a vacation or a break or a funeral or wedding. Or, there was a bunch of stuff. So that report's going to come out next week and break down. But we asked, what type of accommodation did you choose? In the vast majority of people, I forget the actual percentage, but it was more than the rest combined, was hotel, motel, resort. Vacation rentals was a lot smaller. So I think what we're seeing in the data is that because Expedia and folks like that are saying, well, we're seeing more growth relative in vacation rentals than we are in hotels, it's more of a situation of there's a lot more density of hotels that aren't seeing recovery. So as a statistical percentage, it's going to look like it's bigger than it is. But I don't.
It's the big increase in vinyl sales.
Correct.
Right. Small number, big impact. But and I agree with you on that. And I think also too, with that being said, definitely with the statistical numbers and the destination, beaches down here are gold. That's gold for any drive market for us right now is gold. They're not going to Midtown, no place in the middle of nowhere to go get away from everything. They're going to someplace they can do what we did. But
well, I don't know. Some people are going to small towns. We're seeing in terms of the number of people that say they are intending to travel in the next 30, 60, or 90 days. Small towns is up there, right? It's right below beaches.
Oh, cool.
Cities are waiting.
There's no beach near Grand Junction, Colorado, and this whole town is up substantially year over year for the summer.
Yeah, a lot of small towns are up.
But
It's really interesting. And going back to the conversation earlier that I was listening to about the younger folks that are traveling, not everyone on the call knows this, but my son took his first step into hospitality this summer. He's 14 years old, so just old enough to work in South Carolina. So I kicked him out of the nest and said, you need to go earn your living. And he, at 14, right, that's what we do. So he worked as a pool attendant at a local resort, a large resort, like a 400-unit property.
That's great experience.
I mean, he has grown, matured so much in 8 weeks. I've never. It's the best thing we've ever done with him, and he loves it. And he loves serving people. He's got that hospitality bug. He's a real innkeeper, and I love it. But we had this conversation just a couple of days ago where he said, Dad, I've noticed something. The number of weird issues that I was seeing early on have stopped. And at the beginning, every day he'd come back with, some dude threw a chair off of a balcony, or someone threw a bottle off of a balcony, or someone dumped a bunch of chicken wings in the pool, or like just the crazy stuff we deal with in dealing with the public, right? Every day there were problems. There was a guy threatened to beat him up one day. It was insane. He said, it's really calmed down. Like most days are there's no major events going on. And this is a large, full hotel. And I said, so what do you think that is? He goes, well, I've noticed something. The people that are traveling now are a good bit older than the people that were traveling earlier on. And he said, and I think too, and this is an insight, this is a proud dad moment. He said, I think too, that the people that were traveling earlier were crazier people. They were risk takers because they were traveling at the beginning of COVID. I was like, there's a brilliant insight that a 14-year-old kind of figured out on his own. But he's right. It was younger people that were risk takers, were traveling. But I really think, and places like Myrtle Beach, places like Panama City are probably further ahead on the recovery timeline. But if we know now that 50% of people have traveled since March 30th, 2020, we are now in the mainstream of travelers. I've talked to so many people that are traveling this coming weekend for the first time. I think we're getting back to that point where travel is not such a fearful thing that it was. People are realizing that places don't spread COVID, people do. And if you travel responsibly, you can have a great vacation as long as you don't go and be crazy and do the things you used to do prior to COVID. So it gives me a lot of hope, I think. I'd say that really just as a optimistic look at the future. And we're seeing a lot of markets beginning to pick up.
There's
Give
your new,
yourself
there's your
another
new
2
markets
weeks.
open. I was
Give
going to
yourself
say
another 2 weeks, they'll be talking about RevPAR index and ProPAR. I can't wait till he comes back. The way we need to yield this asset, Dad, is,
There's your new slogan, your marketing. If you want to get out there, places don't kill people, people do. That's it. I love that. That's the insight for me.
Yeah. No, but I also, as a caveat to the whole Airbnb, VRBO, and all this other stuff, their Achilles heel is their cancellation policies. They're brutal, absolutely brutal. There's a no refund 2 weeks out and so forth, and they are rock solid on that because it comes from the platform, not necessarily the host, and it makes it very painful. The only reason why we were willing to go and commit, one, we knew the weather situation wasn't going to deter. Two, it was 2 days away, so it wasn't like we're going to have any major issues, not going to be able to get there. But if I was stretching something out onto a long-term reservation, I wouldn't do it because of the cancellation policies. I'd much rather be able to call a hotel and be able to say, this is the situation, and so forth and so on, negotiate out of it either as a rebook or something. These guys are rock solid. They don't mess with that stuff. They're like,
Also, a lot of when you rent out a home or something like that, it's often for a week or a minimum of 4 nights or something like that. And at a hotel, you can just easily get 1 night. And as Stuart was saying, I
agree with you, but a lot of hotels aren't realizing that, and they're making you do multiple bookings, which puts you into jeopardy of having to change rooms even. We looked at a couple of hotels and flat out, we said, look, we'd like to stay for X days. And they're like, well, we have a 3-night stay, but then you're going to have to do another 3-night stay. And it's like, well, can't we just keep the one? Well, the likely is we can keep you in the room, but we're not certain. Whoa. If I'm unpacking for 3 days and I clean the place that I'm safe in, I don't have to shovel it all up and move to another room.
There's no reason to make it more difficult than it needs to be right now. I think a lot of hotels, they should have adjusted already a lot of their policies, but they shouldn't be putting more restrictions on people. They should be giving people choice. For example, housekeeping is one of those areas where we see a spectrum of preference, right? And everyone's different. Some people don't want any housekeeping. They don't want anyone coming in their room. Some people want extra housekeeping, so it's about understanding each individual guest and what their specific needs are and then catering to those. But it's not about putting arbitrary hurdles or friction in the process. That's just going to
and
hurt.
we as hoteliers and hospitality professionals, that's what we ought to be able to do. Right? We ought to be able to, how do you serve the needs of the guest?
Yeah, on that, guys, that's great. Definitely, we want to serve the guests, and we're all about doing that. But the problem that we've got with a lot of these hotels is resources. Again, you go back to the original. You don't know whether people are going to cancel. You're saying we should have thought everything out there, and you're left with a core few people, especially with smaller independent hotels. You're left with a core few amount of people who are wearing so many different hats right now that they don't know whether they're coming or going. So I can completely understand and empathize. It shouldn't be like that. And we'd like to have it where we'd have it, we can sort all of these policies and things like that. But the reality is the hotels are hurting that much. It's some cases, it's just not possible.
Well, Tristan, I have full disclosure. I work with a number of independent properties, small properties. I've mentioned one of my very good clients many, many times, which is 4 properties that total 100 rooms, 106 rooms. And they've worked out specific things with their employees and the like of who's on call and the like, and folks recognize that there's going to be some hours problem. It is not a union situation, so obviously that's where things start to get a little complicated in some markets. But they've been very clear with their teams about look, we know we're going to have demand on this weekend, and we want to make sure we have people available. We know we're not going to have demand this weekend, but if something changes, who's available to be on call, and they're finding ways to work through that operationally. It's you gotta think about the things that we used to do, 6 months ago, a year ago, are not the way you're going to get through the next 6 months or a year. You have to come up with situations that work for the reality of your property, your market, your area, because that's the only way you're going to get through it.
And some of it saves time. You think about the housekeeping thing. If you give people a choice and 70% of people say, I don't want daily housekeeping, that just saved you so much labor time.
Yeah.
We've got some hotels that have gone completely to only clean at checkout, and there's a fee for that. So It's about setting expectations with the guest. This isn't the same as the last time you stayed at the hotel because there's a global pandemic going on. Here's what's different and why we're doing it is to protect you and protect our staff. If you have that narrative, most people are pretty understanding about it, but have the conversation up front so that we're not surprising them later. You know, we always used to talk on this show and in the hospitality industry about surprising the guest, and surprise and delight was that cliche. That you don't want to surprise the guest right now. That's the last thing they want. They need stability. They need certainty because there's so much uncertainty. We've got to be clear in our communication from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can think of a certain pair of men's underwear that surprised the living daylights out of me. I've mentioned it before on my one and only stay in a hotel that I found. So, yeah, I didn't appreciate it. I normally do like surprises.
You should give no more context to that story and just leave it
there. Indeed, yeah, that's a good idea. You have to listen to 3 shows ago, I think, and find the full story there. About 3.5 hours into the 10-hour show that we did.
Yeah, just go back and watch every episode, starting at episode 1, and eventually you'll hear it.
Yeah. It's good context. It's what Lauren made me and Ben do before we could join the show.
Oh yeah, there was like a whole like litigation back and forth, contracts. There was lawyers. There was 10 people.
My people.
Yeah,
Just talking about people wearing different hats and so many hats. I was on a call with a GM of a hotel in the UK. It was late at night, still at the property, doing sorting his rates out for the weekend whilst delivering food to rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on he was on his mobile and I had the earbuds in and he was just, bear me 2 seconds, man, I'm just going to put you in my pocket for a second. So he did. I was like, oh, here's your food. He delivered it and then went back to his room, brought his rates back up and we continued the conversation. So it's necessary. It's admirable, and it's sort of the spirit of hospitality of everybody just doing what needs to be done to keep the doors open. And that was in the UK, and I imagine there's similar things are happening in the US as well.
I have a DSM who I had a call with a couple of days ago who said, "Can we push back by 10 minutes?" They said, "I'm still cleaning out a couple of extra rooms, and I'm not done yet."
Yeah.
So yeah, they were pitching in as a housekeeper. I mean, again, you do what you need to do, right? It's
the innkeeper spirit. Everyone has to.
And you don't have to go to Zumba that day because it really gives you good fitness.
You get a good shoulder workout. Yeah.
I say this in general terms, but I know it's more specific instances. Sometimes the wrong people were let go.
I have no opinion on that at all, Lauren.
Yeah, me neither. No one.
Oh, and then
everyone but Pegasus, they got it spot on.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. Were you speaking Swahili then?
Everybody but Pegasus. What I'm saying in the hotel operations, it was a natural progression to say we keep our top end people, our officers. Mm-hmm. Those people don't do the work that they're now asked to do. They're resigned to doing it if they want to maintain a paycheck. The people that did it best, unfortunately, may have been let go. And I know each circumstance is different, and sometimes payrolls were just certain ways we couldn't keep certain people. There's unions and everything else that have a mix of all these things that go on with all this. So I understand there's a lot of complexities by the general statement that I make of it. But these people are doing it out of resignation of doing it. The really good ones that are succeeding are the ones that did it before and earned their right to be at the level that they were, and they just have to polish off the old skills and go back to it. You know, those are the genuine people. Those are the ones that are getting it done. The people that rose to a level of title that didn't work their way up the system but were given that are the ones that are struggling. They're the ones that now have to do what they used to just delegate and regulate to and oversee. They weren't the ones that were actually facilitating the process. So there is a mix that this might, out of this whole process, be a redefinition as to how to react to something like this in the future tense. How do you qualify your team that you're keeping, not based on title and position, but on performance and need? I mean, nobody's really bringing that up in conversation because we're in the midst of the decision right now.
And can I just point out to all the executives that are watching this show, Lauren's not talking about you. He's talking about the other ones.
Oh, no, exactly. I'm not about that.
He's talking about the other guys.
I kept waiting for him to add the words real Americans and then say, I have approved this message.
Well, there's no question that people who are handling multiple roles now and moving from one department to another, and really seeing the way the whole operation runs, that they are going to have to change. And I think that is a good thing. 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 And I are going to have a real asset of that education and that insight in the future, no matter what they do.
Yeah,
Right, and that's
learn. It took companies decades to learn cut once and cut deep, and although not everybody got the message and they had this slow bleed, but I guess it's going to take a while now. Cut once, cut deep, and cut the right people is the next thing. Now,
And what I would add to that, I mean, this is when you're going to get good at what you do, right? I sometimes joke that in 2007 I was the best, digital marketer in the hospitality industry because, man, everything I did worked. It was spectacular. I could do no wrong, right? And then 2008 came along and kicked us in the teeth, and I was like, oh wow, here's all the things I don't know how to do, and here's all the things where we have to get better and smarter and the like, right? And the same thing happened in 2001. The same thing happened in other times. But it's one of those things where this is where you learn what your guests value. This is where you learn how to be really good at what you do. And, you're going to come out stronger for it, or you're going to be some of those people who are like, wow, I don't like the part where I have to change linens occasionally. Maybe this isn't meant for me, right? And that's okay, too. Go find someplace else. You'll be happy.
Tim, you just
it probably isn't
explained
gonna be hospitality.
digital marketing conference. You walked into the room, the road carpet rolled out, and there was these people throwing rose petals in front of you. Now I know why. You thought you walked on water. That's what it was.
I didn't think I walked on water, and I thought my feet didn't get wet. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. No, but it's one of those things when it's easy when all boats are rising with the tide,
Yes.
right? It's when times are tough. It's when you actually learn how to do your job very well. And you either learn how to do your job very well, or you have to find something else to do.
Yeah, that's why you went into consultancy, right? Yeah.
2011, my friend. 2011.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, I'm going to expand Tim's
Got over the
statement.
hump, and then decided.
When he said, who'd you quote that said, when you built the ship, you built the shipwreck? I mean, I know Stuart loves using that.
Paul Virilio.
I'm going to add to it that ships are good in the water, but not with water in them. So by the same statement, all the boats that keep the water out, they float when they go to the top.
These analogies are getting too much, man. Like I can't follow boats and Tim's feet, and it's just too
I
much.
know, right?
There's a lot of water going on here, and nobody's mentioned about it flowing under bridges yet. I'm sure that's going to happen.
But it's going
soon.
to come, and there's going to be some oil on it. There's
Whatever.
going to be some oil on the water, and there's going to
Whatever. I was going to say, Tim, we're talking about people doing different roles, and and Adele, you were talking about a role that you're then going to be good at. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to do a role because you overtly or privately think it's beneath you, hospitality probably isn't the right industry for you.
That's exactly right.
exactly right.
Without wanting to sound too
Exactly right.
spiritual, you've got to have quite a servant's heart for this industry, I think, and want to serve. Want to not surprise and delight, but go beyond the expectations of your guest. And if you feel something's below you, then again, I just don't think it is. So I think the people who are suited to this industry are going to shine, and I think they'll probably have a better appreciation of the work that the people they used to manage do. And when we eventually get the resurgence and the industry bounces back, they might. I'll tell you what, have another break, have a longer break, have a longer lunch, work slower. There's some more staff.
Yeah.
When the owner of the Library Hotel Collection, Henry Callan, hired me 20 years ago, he didn't say, Adele, you're going to be over sales and marketing, and I want you to, make sales calls and do this and do this and do the other thing. He just said, hey, this is our business. It's your responsibility to make it as successful as it can possibly be. And, that was the goal. And that gave me complete freedom to say whether I needed to make sales calls or I needed to focus on the guest experience in order to be a magnet for new business, as opposed to begging for new business. And, that kind of flexibility, when you hire people and you know that your vision is, your task may be to hand the keys to somebody, your task may be to, make sure their baggage gets to their rooms or clean their rooms or whatever. But if you tell people, think about it as though this is your business and your job is to make sure that everybody's happy so that they go out into the world and say great things about you, whatever it takes in order to get the business, that's what we need to do. And if you hire the kind of people that say, yes, that's what I want, I want to do the right thing for the guests so that they are super satisfied and they'll tell all their friends or go online, etc. Then you have no problems because they're happy to do other things because that's where their heart is. And you're right. If you don't feel that it's an honor and a privilege to contribute to people's lives, to make people's lives better, people have had a rough time, they need a break. This is a big relief from all the stress of this virus and quarantine and lockdown situations all over the place. They want to connect with people they love. If their heart is in the right place, you call it a servant's heart. I just call it trying to be nice to people, kind to people, making people happy. You're not going to have any problem. People are going to be happy to move from one thing to another, whatever it takes. That's the attitude everybody should come into the hospitality business with.
You know, it's
Absolutely
funny.
agree.
It's funny when I start with new hotels. Sorry, Ben, this will be super quick. When I start with new hotels, we frequently would do an exercise where we do some sentiment analysis on the reviews that they got on, you know, social media sites, on TripAdvisor, on places like that, on Expedia and the like. And the number one thing that comes up again and again and again, both positive and negative, is staff, right? You know, there's a lot of beautiful buildings in this industry. There are a lot of beautiful spaces in this industry, but the memorable stays get tied back to the people, get tied back to this person took really good care of me. This person did a really great job. Or the front desk, you know, the front desk agent was a nightmare. Or, the guest attendant was, you know, surly or something. People remember the people that they interact with. People remember how they feel. You know, a beautiful room is a beautiful room, but a beautiful room where you get treated like crap, people are going to say, I don't care that it was a beautiful room. I'll never go there again.
Well, one way or another, people have to have something to talk about, right? Because if I go into a typical hotel room, let's say everything goes fine, nothing goes wrong whatsoever. It's a clean room. I check in, I go to my room, I sleep good, I check out. I can't write a review about that.
Right.
I can't write a review that says it's fine.
Right.
If something goes really well, now I have something to talk about. If something goes really bad, now I have something to talk about. You don't see a lot of in between.
That's absolutely
And
right.
if you have a situation where something went wrong, but you were encouraged, people were asking you, you know, how's everything going? And you told them, and the way they fixed it is above and beyond. You have more loyalty than if everything just went smooth. So both are true, but absolutely, Bean, you must have read one of my articles about giving people something to talk about.
Well, and just to that, to Dean's point, you know, one of the things we focus on is the way you ask the question. So if you are only focused on trying to frame the perspective of how did things go with the hotel only, you're only going to get the people who are in the extremes of that. However, if you do have a question like, what was amazing about this trip, you're going to get some type of story. And chances are, even if it's not directly about the property, it's selling the why of staying at that property and is still a very effective thing. So the way you frame a question can, you know, greatly change the amount of audience who will feel like they have something to contribute.
So you're saying, how awesome were we? Super awesome, exceedingly super awesome, the awesomest ever. By the way, speaking of awesomest ever, you guys are all that, but I have to run. So,
well, because Tim and I aren't allowed to coexist. The agreement we made with the NSA was that we would not be in the same spot for too long. So.
Oh, I thought you better deal with the devil, not the NSA.
Well, you mean Lauren, the deal with Lauren. Yeah.
Yeah. I the deal with Lauren. Yeah. Mr. Tim, people want to know more about you and your amazing, excellent podcast and everything that you do. Where is it they can find you, sir?
TimPeter.com and TimPeter.com/podcast. And on social, I'm typically Tim Peter, except for Twitter, where I'm at TC Peter.
Awesome.
Don't ask why. He's some guy in Germany. Hi, Tim Peter in Germany, however you're doing today. Great seeing you all. Hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend for
You
those
too,
of you in
Tim.
the States. And hope the rest of you do well. And I'll see you in a week.
All right.
Bye
Mr.
now.
Edwards, let me introduce Richard Farrar up in the upper corner. Sorry if we didn't get a chance to
Hey,
make it.
Richard. How are you? Thanks for joining us today.
I will add one comment to that. From when I used to open and run up restaurants and so forth, I used to run the divey bar that had peanuts shells on the floor, and the beer was slightly warm, and the place was kind of shambly and a little dusty, maybe from time to time. No matter how much you tried to clean, you had that little bar tackiness on it, and we were packed. And I had so many people try to compete with us, where they built super spiffy, nifty, clean. They had TVs where I had maybe like a TV, and nobody could really see it unless you're sitting at the bar. And yet we were always packed because the people, the team was what made it. The people
authenticity,
that knew the server. You sat down at a table, your drink dropped in front of you. It wasn't because you had to ask for it, because we knew what you wanted, and we knew what your family was doing. You knew whether and all these other places were sterile, if anybody remembers Bennigan-esque places that were, you walked in, they tried to act like they were like that, but the team wasn't alive. They were a machine. Hi, welcome, Bennigan's. What can I get for you today? They were just automated. And that's, to your point about people, that's what makes the story. Not the fact, as Dean said, that it's a clean room. Okay, hey, it's a nice place. Great. No event there. But if you're talking about, you wouldn't believe when this happened, what they did. Or when they went and I went into, this is what they did for me. Those are the stories that people love sharing, especially when, at Dell's point, something was wrong and you went and fixed it so well. That's the story.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, how many times?
It's never the employee's fault. If they're being robotic, it's our fault. As we're there to support and coach the team, right? We're there to make sure that they're functioning and giving their optimal performance. So if we're not giving them the coaching that they need and the tools they need and the information they need and the inspiration that they need, then it's completely our fault. Either we didn't do all of those things or we hired wrong. And pretty much there's one thing that I found that almost always works. If they're not sparkling sunshine on you in the interview, if they're not trying to be people pleasers to you, they're not going to do it for your guests. This is a critical moment. If there's ever a moment that they're trying to please somebody, it should be at the interview. If they're grumpy, if they're not smiling, if they're not trying to give you what you need in terms of answering your questions, it's not going to happen later either. Forget the resume. It's not on the piece of paper.
My team,
Steph, you were going to say something?
at Marriott, we used to open.
Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
We used to open about 125 to 150 hotels a year, Courtyards, Fairfields, whatever. So I'd go to a number of the openings, and this is sort of somewhat pre-TripAdvisor, but whatever. I'd get up and I'd try to help the staff understand how important they were going to be to the hotel. And one of the stories I'd give is that I'd sort of say, how many letters do you think Mr. Marriott gets a year? And, people guess all kinds of numbers. Well, it was about a little shy of 500,000 letters a year. And I said, how many of you think are commenting about the wallpaper and the carpet and the chandeliers? I said, no. Almost all of them are talking about you people, the people that you're the ones that blow life into this building. You're the ones that make it come to life. You're the ones that they're going to come back for. So I when we do get away from the idea that we need hospitable people, whether it's 2 years ago or 2 years from now, I still think that's going to be mighty, mighty important. I always tell the story too that Mary and Joseph went to an inn 2,000 years ago. Someone screwed up the reservation. That's how they ended up out in the stable. Well, we really haven't changed a lot in 2,000 years. We really, really haven't. And if you think back, Ford Motor didn't exist 2,000 years ago. iPhones didn't exist 2,000 years ago. But traveling and hospitality did. And I contend, I don't know what's going to get rid of our business, but I cannot fathom what that's going to be in the next 100 years. I got to believe in the next 100 years, people are still going places. There may be some virtual stuff, but I still think people will want to go. So I think we've got a really cool long-term, maybe not the next year, but if you want to make a career, I still think that it's an okay business to be in.
And I do hope Mr. Marriott personally replied to all 500,000 letters that came to him, just for the hospitality of it, and that personal touch. Definitely. I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
Well, I mean,
Long
and that's
time ago he
why
did.
if you ever try and shake his hand, he'll just cripple you because of the grip strength he has from handwriting all those letters.
He's got one arm bigger than the other, though. That's
I
the-
will actually attest.
Popeye arm.
I will attest that Mr. Marriott, any time I had the privilege of seeing him wherever he was, would never ignore anybody. Nobody. He ignored nobody.
Well,
He-
it's because he
Yeah,
is hospitality. I mean,
Everybody in a room at some point, I mean, obviously, speaking to a large room of thousands, no, but the circle of people that are around him, he would not ignore people. He was very much that person that when, as the old adage, when we walk through a room and somebody said, I don't know what these people do, he would say, I do. He did. He knew what people did. He knew what they did and what they were doing it for. He was always that kind of guy.
and
I
it's
was at
why
the-
it's why he always had like 30 feet between him and you. He knew who Lauren was.
I was at the Marriott headquarters and they have a really nice like cafeteria and he's down there just chatting with everybody, eating down the cafeteria with all the staff and just talking with whoever. I mean, I bet his lunch probably took 2 hours because everyone had to come up and talk to him. But I mean, he didn't turn a person down in the cafeteria.
Lauren, I thought it was more than 30 feet on the restraining order.
Well, it depends on who has a tape measure at the time that you're there.
Okay, fair enough.
That's how we got
The devil's in the detail. Yeah.
It was more painful with the taser ankle thing when they figured that out and put it on me. That measured it really well.
Hey, I was gonna ask you guys, just because of something Lauren said about, how his bar worked. Have you seen the new Applebee's commercial where they basically overlay the Cheers song? And they are implying that everyone in Applebee's, knows your name because it's a neighborhood bar and grill. Have you guys seen the commercial?
They know your name, however, no matter what, they will get your order wrong. So focus on the message you can do. Like, we definitely will know your name. You just won't get the right order.
Yeah. Lauren, don't get a job there.
Lauren's got his name badge on though, so he wears his name badge, so there's
That's
no,
right.
no fear that people will forget.
But
who
I
he
leave it
is.
upside down so I don't forget my name. Hi, my name is because I'm so good with names, that's for sure. I wanted to throw this in response to something Richard said earlier about the adaptability of hotels. I thought it was an interesting article that Robert had shared with us about the usages of hotels. Ironically, there's a statistical error in this article that refers to that people in England are the hardest working or longest working people.
Yeah, you're right. It's not people in England.
No,
it's
people in England, Butler. People in
English
England.
people,
Yeah.
English people, wherever they are. English
Why,
people.
why are you talking about this? I didn't think you were English.
Yeah, there's a bad stat in there, but besides from that bad stat, it does make us some interesting points because we have found that people are looking not because they have to travel and be there from away from their living. They actually live in around the area. They need a place different than where they're at home just to change scenery. They're looking for good Wi-Fi, decent desk. And then the other thing, and I wanted to bring this up as a question. We have dead conference rooms right now, and we have stages in them, or we can put stages in them and so forth. I keep proposing this, but nobody's really picked it up yet but one, where they actually brought in the panel for a presentation. It was a corporate event that they had to cancel, but they brought the corporate officers that were going to do the presentation to the corporate attendees who were virtual. They had a handful of people that were from the corporate office in the room, well spaced, totally distanced, but they put the panel up on the stage with plenty of space, podium way off to the side, presentation screen, and they put the camera facing them, and then did their corporate meeting as if it was an actual conference where people were in the room. The perspective was from the room perspective. They could see the slide deck on a separate screen. It was a different push. These are just adaptive ways. I mean, what do you think about all this? Is this something that we will eventually have to lean into a little bit more, saying, hey, we can be that kind of hotel for you or something? Because, I mean, I think, Richard, you brought up about the small weddings and conferences and, dining. I think it was brought up in the chat about the dining opportunities with hotels, small dining and stuff like that. I mean, is this going to be, based on what Tim said, long stay?
Yes, I agree. The English are the hardest working.
I mean, when you add the total work time without subtracting all the tea breaks, yes. Okay, but when you pull out all the tea breaks, it's half the time.
Or beer breaks. It depends on who you're talking to.
That's what they call tea, isn't it?
Oh.
No, Lauren, listen, first of all, for specific reasons, sure, I think there's an opportunity there. However, the expense of doing that versus what's available at home. Like, I think the focus of this article of trying to be an office space for them to escape and get some quiet and some high quality is a much more likely thing than I'm willing to pay you to have a meeting room with all that AV set up so I could just have a slightly better looking background for my audience. I just don't. I think you're talking about a supreme niche versus this article, which is an obvious need of scale.
But I do think someone's going to get the hybrid version right, where some of the people will be on site, some of the people will be off site. And I guess that's a use case that would work, where you have the option, you can attend it live and it's this cost, and you can attend digitally and it's this cost, and you still have that event. So that might be a good use case.
Well, I mean, to your point, eTourism Summit from Connect Travel is doing a hybrid event on October 1st here at the Lowe's Royal Pacific that will also have all the sessions and everything will be hybrid. So you could either have been there in person or, attend all the sessions electronically. So, well, that type of stuff I definitely see happening. But the specific to Lauren's story, and I'm just picking on Lauren, but I don't think one person's going to do it.
No, you're right. Absolutely
Well,
right.
Sort of a sidebar to that. I don't know if you saw that REI, the I guess the outdoor sports folks or whatever you want to call it, equipment. I think they've shut down their corporate headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So they've said people can work from home. They've been working from home. We might as well shut this baby down. So now their big dilemma is, how do they rally their troops in a setting on occasion to sort of get that camaraderie every 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, whatever. So I think there's lots of things that this COVID thing has done, whether it's what we were just talking about, or these businesses find out, hey, we don't need everybody all in the same room, except occasionally. And then what's that really mean? What's that interaction look like? And maybe that's got all kinds of ramifications to our industry directly or indirectly, business-wise, or just the way we work. I mean, again, Marriott headquarters has got 3,000 people in it, or did. It's probably got 300 now. But I mean, all these things are pretty open for what's going to happen next.
Well, and I think it's going to bring a new demand to small meeting. So you're going to end up, as the workforce distributes inevitably, right? Like, so Silicon Valley, a lot of those big players have said you can work from anywhere now. Those people are going to end up still kind of clustering in areas. They're going to make consumer decisions based on, the profile of who they are, and they're going to be similar to other employees. I think you're going to see lots of small meetings come from this distribution of the workforce. I think you're going to see that with more frequency. And this is where I think, these hotels that have maybe only a boardroom or, a boardroom in another small space may actually see a good amount of demand for usage of that for, small employee team meetings, things like that. And then I do think it will have a effect on larger annual company meetings when big meetings can come back, is it's going to be needed even more now, and it'll probably be longer duration, because normally big company meetings also had a customer component to it. Now you're going to need multiple days just for your staff to be able to see each other, because you may have departments spread geographically to where they can't meet easily.
Also, what I'm hearing from some people is that they're wanting to bypass Big Brother because they're using the corporate communication platforms. Everything's recorded. Sometimes they want conversations in what they're doing that isn't necessarily always by attendance or audience from other people. So there's that possibility. Just to let everyone know, in the chat, we've been talking about the fight of fights today. Ding, ding, ding. Because we thought we could have been next week, but it's going to be now. It's happening now. The gauntlet's going down now. It seems that Stephanie has the idea about towards metasearch that isn't exactly in alignment with Dean Schmidt's idea of metasearch. So we have a great polarity of discussion that I would love to bring into. I don't know who's the home field advantage. We're going to give it to Steph. We're going to give Steph the home field advantage. Okay. Dean's going to be the visiting contender to this. And if we could, Stephanie, if you could, you made this article and it has some great points to it. Not everything's bad about it or good or So please tell me your contention to things, and then we'll let Dean have at it, and then we'll just chime in and have our own weird perspective on it.
Okay, so I wrote this article about MetaSearch, and there's a couple of caveats I'll tell to the story. So I'll drop the blog that I wrote into the chat. But I primarily work with branded hotels. So Marriott, Hilton, IHG, they have a certain, at least those brands have a relationship with a third-party vendor where you can run MetaSearch through these partners. And I'm hearing from a lot of owners, the brands are telling them, oh, you need to invest here, you need to invest here. But right now we don't have that much money. And me personally, if you're going to give me money to manage and you're going to say I only have X amount of dollars, then I'm going to look at it and say, where's the best place to put these dollars? And me personally, I would rather see those funds being invested in incremental revenue. And part of what I go through in the blog is how you calculate ROAS for a MetaSearch. And yes, there are assumptions that are made that I'm sure we can have an open discussion about. How do you calculate ROAS for a MetaSearch transaction? So in my personal belief, you should be going through and saying, if you're in Google Hotel Ads and you're already searching for a specific hotel, that's when you're going to find Google Hotel Ads, right? You're already going to be looking for a specific hotel and you're in their bubble, so to speak. If your own website's first and Expedia is there, whoever gets that transaction, I make an assumption that that reservation can either go to Expedia or it can go direct. So the difference in that, what you're making is what you save in commissions, not going to the OTAs. So what you should be calculating your ROAS on is your incremental profitability, not the total reservation value, the total revenue value of that entire reservation. So there's a lot of other, and then not to mention everyone's playing with Expedia promo, so you're out of whack and out of parity with probably half the hotels anyway. So you're throwing your money in the tube. But that's the premise of why I think that hoteliers need to think more strategically about how they calculate ROAS. With the caveat, there's a lot of different variables, whether it's conversion numbers, commission numbers that go into play and how you calculate that. So different hotels are going to come up with different math depending on what their value and what their rates are.
And Stephanie comes out swinging with a low blow to the
Okay. Well, Dean. And don't start with Jane, you ignorant slut. Don't do that. Don't go Saturday Night Live.
So very good points, and I think that the biggest point of all of that too being the fact that no generalization that applies to everyone out there, right? Everything does have to be specific to the individual. Every hotel is different and so on, right? But now one of the first things I would bring up is the fact that we're making an assumption that if the consumer clicks out to Expedia or Booking.com or any of those other channels, that we're just as likely to get the booking as we were if they went to our own website. And while I can't give a statistic to this, we know that that's just not going to be true, because when they land on that OTA channel, they're presented with your hotel at the top of the list, along with a myriad of other properties that, hey, here are other places that can be booked. Expedia and Booking.com don't get paid just because they're booking your hotel. They get paid for a booking. They don't really care where it's at. So they just want to get the booking. So right away, we have to take into consider get that booking versus actually getting it. So before we think about the cost of sale and return, think about cost of not getting the sale as well as part of that. So we know that conversion rates are going to be higher as they come to your brand.com. Now, what exactly those numbers are going to vary quite a bit. Now, certainly if your conversion rates are really low, and I've seen these cases, say they're at a 3% conversion rate coming off of Meta, and that can be very difficult to optimize. And usually, though, if I see that, that means it's like a $800 a night hotel that has a longer sales cycle and people just are not as spontaneous. Typically, when I look at brands and have worked with many of the brands, their conversion rates are 10% and better coming off of MetaSearch. So now you can really start doing some crazy things, and you're capturing that guest data. So even if they don't book the reservation, you have the opportunity to apply remarketing strategies. That's coming from a brand level, not a property level, of course, to build what's called the Google audiences. So now, even just from a MetaSearch perspective, when they come back later on, I can bid more aggressively to them. You say they went to your website, they didn't book, but now they're shopping again. Now I really know that I want that person to book directly with me. And so it gives you a lot more options than if it were to go through the OTA.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of the problem. I work in the branded hotel space, so having them come direct doesn't mean that I get their name and email address necessarily. That's going to go into, I might get reservation data, but from a branded hotel standpoint, it's not like, and there are tools that you can put them into the remarketing pool, but for the most part, if they put that conversion pixel in there, and if they convert, then they get excluded from the data that you get to be able to remarket to them. So while I would love to have all that data, at least in the branded space at a hotel level, that's not data that we're going to get. And I use the 5% conversion rate. The only hotels that we're working right now are branded, and I'm rarely seeing over a 5% conversion rate in this time period. In this COVID environment, I'm not seeing those type of conversion rates, and we have full service and select service hotels, and we're not seeing those high of conversion rates. But that would make a big difference in the ROI factor for sure.
Yeah, and you're going to have a problem that even at a 10% conversion rate, you've probably got 40% cancellation. So totally understanding that.
Right.
Within your scenario, with what you're talking about with the brand, so most of the brands out there now offer what they call top-off programs, right? So most of this marketing in metasearch is coming from the brand corporate level, but they're not marketing your hotel. They're marketing Marriott, Hilton, Wyndham, whatever it may be, right? They're marketing that brand specifically, but they all have variations of a top-off program, and they have fancy names for it that they do for each one of them. Now, that gets to be a little bit more interesting when we talk about return, because a lot of times the numbers that you're going to see for that, hey, Tristan.
Sorry, I was saying he needs to drop off.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Dean. Sorry, guys, I gotta go. Gotta drop off.
And thanks for your time. We'll have Tris go over and tell you all the good stuff about your agency and how bad you are and stuff. Yeah, okay.
Basically, yeah, we're the Keanu Reeves of digital marketing. Thanks very much, guys. See you later on.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
Bye, Ben.
So a lot of times the stats that you're going to see from the campaign manager, the program that you're doing on, are going to show you the returns specifically to your investment, right? So let's say hypothetically that the click actually costs $3. And let's say hypothetically that your location contributed $1 of that and the brand contributed $2 of that. And then let's say that you got a 10 to 1 ROI. Well, that's 10 to $1 that you put in. That's not 10 to 3, right? So it's a little bit misleading because you still paid the marketing dollars, but you may not be able to see the bigger picture of what all those stats were. So definitely taking that into consideration, but also then recognizing that that can be marketing that is specific to your individual property. So when we think about it from a larger digital marketing perspective, one of the number one rules of digital marketing is owning your branded search terms, right? So if somebody's looking for your property by name, you want to own that space. And metasearch is no different, right? You're owning the space on the left-hand side of that screen on Google. Why don't you want to own the space on the right-hand side of the screen? Those two go hand in hand. But it can bring incremental too, where people aren't looking specifically for you, where people are looking for hotels in Nashville. There are ways that you can actually increase your market ranking using Google promoted properties and things like that. They have a lower return, just like a lower return for a non-branded search term would be, right? But there are ways that you can do that.
Well, let's be very clear for the audience. When we talk about incremental exposure and visibility within that space. So Google promoted properties, I do feel is incremental. TripAdvisor sponsor placement is that, but it's super confusing to the regular hotelier. But you also have TripAdvisor that's metasearch and TripAdvisor sponsor that's not. You have Google Hotel Ads that's metasearch, and you have Google Property Promotion that's not metasearch. So I think to the normal everyday hotelier, they're like, why are there two Googles and why are there two TripAdvisors in my metasearch options? And to them, they're like, well, the brand just told me to do this, and so I'm just gonna do it. So I think maybe I need to go back and revise the article and talk about what I think is truly incremental visibility and what's not.
I think that's a fair point. And even within Google, you take it a step further because you've got Google Local Universal, where they search for your property by name, and Google Maps, where they're just looking for hotels in a space, right? It's two different demographics, even before we start talking about promoted properties, but it's kind of a sub-channel within Google. Same thing for TripAdvisor, right? TripAdvisor, you can go in there looking for a property, looking for hotels in an area, and then your popularity ranking comes into play and different things like that. So yeah, different ways of getting to the same place. Hopefully, and that's a very, very big qualifier, but hopefully you have tracking from your brand in there that separates the two. And there are ways of doing that, where you can say this was a click that came from a promoted hotels or promoted properties, as they now call it, versus this came specifically from an actual meta search campaign.
And you've got
Yeah, and you're right. And the ROIs for Google property promotion or whatever they call it has been horrid. So
Yeah.
I want to believe in it. And I want it to succeed, and the ROIs just haven't been. And there's not much traction to be had. You would think people using maps and whatever it would work, but we haven't gained any traction in that space.
but
Yeah,
you've got to be
non-branded
careful
search
with
terms.
it. No, so you've got to be careful with it because you're talking about, or you're possibly overlooking attribution here as well, because you've got a channel where we're talking about meta search, and did it actually convert as the last click, or or whatever attribution model that each provider is offering you at that time. But you've also got to look. Meta search, as Dean mentioned there, it can be used at different stages of people searching for a hotel, but it's also that middle section as well. So you've got people looking for hotels in downtown wherever or whatever it's going to be, or people looking specifically for the brand name. But when people are looking specifically for the brand name, they're not just looking for you to book and purchase. It may be that I've got a list of hotels and I'm checking out all of those. I've got my short list. It's how how you're whittling down the actual decision-making process. And we've found that when we've been using Meta works in every single part of that journey and that cycle. I don't want to use funnel because I know it'll upset Lauren. We're not allowed to use funnels.
Funnels, that's part of the contract.
Yeah, but to be fair, Tris, I mean, in your world, you have much better tracking available to you than in Stephanie's world, where she's beholden to the brand
Totally
stack,
agree.
which does not allow her to have visibility into that.
Absolutely.
And I see both sides of what both Dean and Stephanie are saying, but again, with Stephanie, it's because, quite honestly, the brand is a much better deployment of meta spend than an individual branded property is, for the exact reason of they have more product in a market. Their spend is going to net for the mothership a much better return on investment. And it is one of those investments that brands should be all in on because it is a rising tide type investment, especially in markets where they're very dense with their different offerings.
Sorry, Ed, were you saying that you think meta search is better for brand than, say, independent? Is that it?
No, I'm saying, well, first of all, any form of customer acquisition cost is going to receive a better return on investment the more product you have to sell, because you're more likely to have the product that meets the need of the audience. So that same thing I'm saying about Meta is true for most customer acquisition spend. It's what the OTAs live off of, right? Like the OTAs make a ton more on their advertising spend than an independent hotel or a single hotel will, because they have tons of stuff to sell you. But with Meta specifically, if you have a brand mothership who can be attracting market level demand across their branded portfolio, that is a better use of funds than each individual property trying to put into their own Meta efforts, because there's waste involved in that acquisition. There's less waste at a market level.
I'd like to add into some functionalities to this, and Stephanie, you'll be the one that, if they can correct me on this one, handling meta search for branded hotels at this moment. There are a lot of different tools within the platform Cody. It's easy to just tell them Cody's a great company. They do great stuff. They have the interfaces for most of these brands, and they offer all these variations. And there's a struggle to, and this is where Richard is very good at, and I know that firsthand, is that explaining the value of the tool proposition. They use it as a blend screen. They give you a Phillips screwdriver and say meta search only. Well, not everything's a Phillips screwdriver fix. Sometimes you need a standard, And what happens is there's times where meta search, the limitation factor might be the budget amount. So your voice is down, your channels are down, your ability to be in the market space is down because you're not truly giving the funding for it. It's not a bidding per click. It's an amount of money willing to spend that allows you to create voice. And then your click-through value is whether or not that voice is exercised on a regular basis. Besides from that strategy, the other tools of the expanded OTA placement, there are times it fits exactly what you're saying. There's times you need to amplify your presence on the OTA, so you're double hitting. You're trying to show up for where you have the opportunity with budget availability, and you're trying to go over and show up for when you aren't there on the OTAs that are pushing you. And then when you talk about the Google mapping and so forth, there are times and strategies associated with specific campaigns that's helpful, but it's a specific button. It's not just on. As you pointed out, sometimes it just said because I was told to do it, squanders money, diminishes the value, ownership gets sketchy. They don't like the whole idea. So it's a matter of using what tool at what time for what initiative, and that requires a hand on the throttle. You know, if you're always told that you can't, in a race only pass blue cars, you're going to get stuck not winning the race because a red car is going to get heavy and you can't pass them because you were told you can't spend money on that. So the idea of using all the individual tools at the time best suited for them is really the mix. Cody gives you those things to the brand to use. And the real value of the Cody platform is it's one of the few venues you can look at ROAS and return and so forth. I think what takes away from a lot of this is when you start adding in all the fees you mentioned in your article about the agencies and the commissions and all this, that deteriorates the value proposition. And certainly, to Dean's point, and we do that in our budgeting right now, you have to put in your implied cancellation percentages, which also are variable by time sequence. There's high cancellations during certain times of years. New York, Adele, good gosh, I sometimes had over 80% cancellations on OTAs at some times of the year. You know, just because they're
Booking.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all those things have to go into it. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Trish.
Well, I think one of the things that, I mean, maybe before budget restrictions were a problem. Now there's less money, but there's also, we're seeing less demand in that Cody space. So it's not a faucet that you can turn on to get more incrementality. It's not, there's a cap of what's going on in that market and for that specific hotel that you can spend. No matter what, there's a ceiling, so to speak. It's not like an Expedia travel ads where it's a faucet that you can open up and potentially gain more incrementality or social media or whatever. I mean, there's certainly, I think that's the other thing. Like if an owner sees, oh, I've got a great ROI in August, and I'm like, yeah, but we only spent $150. So we didn't move the needle. So yeah, we had a great ROI. We can pat ourselves on the back, but that's not, we weren't helping anybody achieve any goals this month.
Real revenue goal. Exactly.
One of the things,
Why were you limited to the 150?
just
That's
because
all that hotel and market can spend, because it's within specifically MetaSearch. It's not a, they have to be in your kind of ecosphere, and there has to be demand to support it.
yeah, there's a finite number of people that are going to search on any platform, for any hotel. It doesn't matter whether it's MetaSearch, Google, even OTAs for that matter. There's only going to be a finite number of people searching to go to New York. So you're looking for a share of that. But one of the points I wanted to raise on those restrictions as well, Stephanie, as well, having worked for both brand in terms of MetaSearch and digital marketing, as well as independents, I can see both sides of the story here. But there's also an artificial ceiling that's placed by some brands, not all of them, but certainly the brands that I've had experience with, that the way that they take the corporate marketing budget, which at the end of the day is still budget passed on by the hotels in the first place, in part of their monthly ongoing fees for being part of the brand. How those marketing dollars are actually applied across branded hotels are not always equal. In the chase for getting a positive return on ad spend, you can end up putting more marketing dollars into the big box because everyone's going there, and the little guy who's out in the middle of bum nowhere is maybe getting a fraction of the dollars of what they really should be offering. So from that point of view, the deck is stacked, heavily in the favor of the ones that are actually performing versus the ones that are not. A lot of that can be price parity issues as well. I will concede completely.
And also, too, right now, this is an opportunity in market right now, which is why I'm so emphatic with the people that I'm dealing with about this. This is the time to make hay. A lot of hotels have turned their back on the opportunity that the MetaSearch can provide them for exactly what you're saying, Steph. Money limitations, making payroll, paying bills, and trickling marketing dollars wherever they can put it. They don't see Meta as the value proposition that it can potentially represent. And to your point, that it always will represent something. So if you're the only voice willing to put money in for your market inherently will grow geographically to a certain level. It's not going to go really too big, but it'll go at least in association to what people are looking for in a larger, broader sense. You will show up better and more frequently if you allow for the budget to be placed on it, mitigate it with your cost per click, but be the only player in town right now, because everybody's going to jump back on this boat again. And you are going to be what you said, Tris, the little guy on the left that is not going to have their voice anymore because all the big guys in the middle decide to wake up and start putting dollars into it. It's an opportunity. It's a fractional opportunity right now. And then augment it with all the other little tools.
But I don't think in search, I don't think you can compete like what you spend on Meta versus what the hotel next door spends on Meta. It's not a, there's no competition there really. It's not like Expedia travel ads where you're going head to head with another hotel with your advertising dollars.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Again, you're thinking top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel, to use the funnel first. I'm not allowed. It's in the middle. If I'm looking at, I'm going to look at your comp set because I have got choice. I may have found them on the OTA, but I'm definitely going to check you out on your own website. And how I find you on your own website and the journey it takes me to get there is as important as the end goal that I get to. So it's not just top and bottom. And I've seen this. I've done surveys. We've done results. We've checked it all out. People will put you in that bucket. There may be 1 or 2 hotels that you're looking at. There may be 9 hotels. Who knows? But it will vary. But people will go to you via Meta, they'll go for you via Google Ads, they'll go organically, they'll go in a whole myriad of different ways. And it's about having a comprehensive digital marketing strategy to make sure you can capture those people. I'd love to continue this conversation, and I'm sorry I'm not being able to give you a riposte back there, Stephanie. I've got to drop off, guys.
Chris, real quick, 316. Where to find you? All that stuff.
If you want to get us, it's tris.hayward@3and6.agency. We're on LinkedIn. Give us a shout. Have a great long weekend, everyone. Labor Day for us is called Monday, so I'll be working.
You English people are all the same. You overwork.
I'm just working. See you later.
Bye, Tris.
They're taking
Bye,
our
Tris.
vacation. They're taking.
And I agree that
Vacation.
comprehensive, what Tristan said about being comprehensive is dead on. And I think that's part of the whole thing that I'm trying to get across. I mean, if someone's on your Google hotel ads or, section, they're going to be looking at your pictures. They're going to be looking at your reviews. They're going to be looking at your price against a comp set. All of those things come into play. I'm just saying, of all the different things that you can spend money on, like where your pricing is in there should be one of the less things. Because I think the other thing we haven't talked about is the lifetime value of a customer. And I don't have the data to be able to say who's shopping and, who's potential guests. But I feel like, and this is just from my learnings, the people that are at my hotels right now are not the hotels and the demographics that we were seeing pre-COVID. So can I turn these people into loyal guests? The answer, I think the only way to turn them into loyal guests is to try to get them to stay at your hotel. And for me, if they stayed at Expedia, then we should be trying to get them to be loyalists after they stay with us, after booking that reservation through Expedia. I think there's a bigger opportunity to turn them into loyal guests once they've actually stayed with us versus saying, versus the branding component of it, of where the transaction happens.
I'm going to
Well,
continue.
once they stay with you part applies no matter what channel it comes from, regardless if it's direct, through an OTA or walk-in, whatever the case may be. That applies across the board, right? So that does bring it back to, okay, now what channel do I really want to get it from? And where do I have the best opportunity to really control my narrative with that guest and have any pre and post stay communications with them? And the answer is from a direct booking. So, we know that there's a movement out there for direct bookings, MetaSearch being a key part of that. I want to go back to something Ed was talking about earlier, actually, though, where he talked about the brands and having the market presence within or the number of properties within a city. And you're absolutely spot on with that too, with the brands having an advantage, because when I ran MetaSearch campaigns for one of the major brands, what we found was that there was about a 15% cross sale. So they may have clicked on property A over here, but they ended up booking property B. So they have that advantage of that, property B was actually closer to where I needed to be or had a better rate, whatever the case may be. So that's that advantage that they do have, but that's something that's coming from a brand level more so than a property level.
I need your data, Dean. Let's talk about the real problem here. I just want that data.
Well, I had one point that I thought with less people I could actually get a word in edgewise, but I'm getting better. My elbows are getting better. Just one point I wanted to make was I almost think you have to separate Google from the rest of Meta, because if you look at what Google has done, go search a hotel now. All roads are pushing you down the Meta path.
Yeah.
So if you're not in Google Meta, you're almost not on Google anymore, unless you're doing a direct travel ad buy. You're not there, because even on a travel ad buy, they're pushing you down to Meta, because you'll see in the box there, and then it'll take you down to the Meta channel. So it's almost like you're not there. And I think we all know they're 95%, I think, of the world's market share. 93% of the people actually start their search using Google, right? So it's just, if you're not in Google Meta, it's almost like you're not on Google now.
And I'd like to continue Trish' conversation with this real quick too. We think about this as single path discovery. We know we all agree that's not the case, but we're talking about in the context of single path discovery, which is not truly accurate with the attribution strings that we have. We know that this is a partial process of discovery. And to the point that he made earlier about the fact of top or bottom, or I think Dean, you made top or bottom or whatever. No, trusted that there is a path in between that. There is going to be this discovery of what's in the area, who's similar to this. I like a brand. Ooh, look at these brands. What's their service scores? What's their ratings? All these get mixed and jumbled into the process of this so that when they do come across a hotel by name, us in particular, that we represent ourselves to what Dan just mentioned. We're in the space. We're found for however they found it. Interesting statistics, 62% of all discoveries are being done on mobile now at this point. This is their search platforms. So you look at the Google, you got to go through 5 swipes of Google before you get to 6 swipes of organic or paid, before you get to 7th and 8th swipes beyond of organic. So you need that presence up top. You need to be on that map, which we say doesn't have great conversion, but we can even talk about social that way. Social is not a direct channel. It's an amplifier. It's a catalyst to other things. It does create revenue, but it more importantly creates awareness that creates revenue on the channels of conversion. So all these are part of the overall process to this. I do want to tout Dean's horn for just a second. Dean is in the strata of all this where he can bring an individual hotel to market as much as he can bring a cluster of hotels as he can bring a brand of hotels. So where a lot of people look, and if they're listening to the show, say, well, I'm a mom and pop around the corner. Do not exclude yourself. You have the ability to do that. So just to keep clear that we're not just talking about brands or ownership groups or large hotels that can afford these kind of things. This can be incredibly affordable, capable, and even down to the scale, as Dan pointed out, just be on Google. If all you have to be is in that space, you can be just in that space for literally less than $100 a month.
Can I have a question?
I'm sorry.
Is it possible to do a short-term test? Because I found that 1 year to another year, something would be productive or not productive, or I tried it and it was unproductive, and a year later I tried it and it was productive. Or sometimes I'll see that one hotel and another hotel in the same market have completely different results. One, it's worth every penny, and the other one, I'm putting in, as much as I'm getting, if you know what I mean. Sometimes they're not even charged the same for the same click, which makes no sense, but for some reason that happens. So I find that I need to test things in order to see whether it will work. Can a hotel choose to make just a small test to see whether it's a fit for them or not?
The short answer would be yes. The longer answer is it depends. Because up front, the first thing we've got to do is get you the connectivity and get your rates and availability from point A to point B. Now, maybe you already have that. If you already have that, that makes things a lot easier. If you don't already have that, then that's the first stage of the game. And there's usually some upfront costs in doing that. So getting that all set up and running takes a little bit of upfront work, which kind of is defeating it if you're only running it for 30 days, right? Mm-hmm. So usually you want to have it run a little bit longer in those types of cases. But I would look at that on case-by-case basis. If you have some examples you want to send me, send them offline. I'm happy to talk about them.
We've been talking a lot about...
Go ahead, Richard, I'm sorry. Please, go right ahead.
Well, we've been talking about brands. I guess I think of buckets. I think you've got these single off independent hotels. You've got, again, maybe working for an individual branded hotel or two, and then maybe you're working for either the brand or a regional cluster. The other thing, so I think there's got to be millions of ways to skin the cat in between there, and different levers and how far to push different ones. The other thing with the brand is that they're charging you 3 or 4% for marketing fees already. So to Stephanie's point, she didn't have as much money because the owner of that hotel, that courtyard, says, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm already giving Marriott $10,000 a month. I can't afford to give you any more. You've now only got this tiny little bit to deal with." And I think in an independent hotel, it's not like they have unlimited money, but they're not paying that brand. The brand, I think, for independent hotels becomes almost the internet. So there's different ways that you would have to pull that. But and you're right. When I was with Marriott, we cared about the region. We sort of cared about the individual hotels. But if the cross sell did happen, oh well, it still was in the Marriott coffers.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, and I think that's part of the analysis you have to do. If you're looking at what like you said, if Marriott, you're paying X% and they've already negotiated an awesome percentage on the OTAs, then you have to consider that. I mean, I would assume that most independents pay an average of 5 to 7% more in terms of commissions on the OTAs, and that's a fairly large chunk of change that you have to consider. When you do your calculation. I think the other thing that has just because my article got picked up by a company in the UK, and Dean, I'm going to ask, this one didn't come up in our thread yesterday, that there's a new paper stay model that's not an offering through Cody. So, and they were like, does your opinion change if it's paper stay? And me, without knowing the numbers, without knowing what that model looks like, I feel like hoteliers, when they commission, if they don't having to pay out of pocket, it like hurts less. So they're less likely to do a very detailed, ROI analysis, like, turning on promos and things. It just, for whatever reason, doesn't feel like it's coming out of your pocket in the same way. But
Right.
if you want to speak to that model and how that differs than a traditional, what's been the more traditional cost per click model, I'd be curious on your thoughts.
That's a great point, actually. And it's what we used to call the marketing volleyball game, where whose budget is it? Does it come out of marketing? Does it come as a consumed booking? And how do we keep on tossing that back and forth? And paper stay can be really an effective way of doing that. I think, and I don't want to speak for Cody, but I think they have the ability to run those campaigns.
They do.
Now,
Well, I definitely, when I saw that on the thread on LinkedIn, I emailed my rep and I was like, what is this? Why would I know this?
The
Yeah, they
challenge I might run into, though, is that you can't do a paper stay, which is effectively a commission model, combined with a CPC model that the brand might be running. Those two don't play together, right?
Well, and if the brand's already doing a certain contribution for some proportion of share of voice, they wouldn't. You wouldn't want to turn that off. You wouldn't want to turn the brand's funds off to transition to that model, right?
Right.
So Sojourn dabbled in that space as well. I'm sorry, Dean, I didn't want to interrupt. I want to throw in the Sojourn played in the space for a while and still tries to play in the commission model.
They just re-signed. They just reconnected with IHG on the commission model. IHG was out, and now they're actually back in for that.
And it can be advantageous in the fact that if you weren't playing in the space, it can get you in the space. So better to be on there and at a commission basis than not at all. And you've got nothing to lose, right? There's no risk in doing it that way. The disadvantage is you have no control over it. It'd be what Google's going to end up doing is they're going to reverse engineer that into what they call an effective cost per click. And that's going to determine what your ranking is on there. Yep. You have no control over it whatsoever. It's get what you get, don't throw a fit. But it's better than nothing.
Two other impacts to that. One is the fact that you're fighting with your PPC campaigns against that because everybody's going for brand. Brand is the fattest fruit. So the commission models, they just absolutely beat to death your brand and who you are. And if you're PPCing, you're competing with yourself in the same space. So you have to step back from that. And then also, to Dean's point, if their campaigns are not successful, your negative ranking gets hit. Your PPC campaigns actually cost you more if they're not successful at what they're doing. If they're doing just broadcast pray and spray stuff and just turning faucets on and trying to get any demand into market and they're irrelevant to the process, you're going to get hit on your ranking value, authority ranking on your PPC because they put the two together. Google does know who you are when it comes to that.
Everything.
Yeah, I know in the class I teach, I talk about the Google algorithm and I give a long stream of like what it is. And then I say, let me simplify it for you. It's position equals when Google makes the most money.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point. That is an excellent point.
Well, we are Google recently, by recently I mean yesterday, there was an announcement that came out by some of the vendors out there, and it has since been retracted today, actually.
Yes.
So you know where I'm going with this.
Yes, I do, because I couldn't get in there to respond fast enough.
Google has been dabbling with adding an organic listing to your meta search results, which means that you don't have to pay anything for it. Of course, you get to the bottom, you're going to be at the bottom of the list, but you can be on there organically. So that may or may not be a real thing. So to just put that out there, it was been retracted, but if that does come to pass, that makes things really interesting.
Hey, I got a quick question.
I thought I was crazy because I couldn't find it.
But I did want to ask this. So if you go to GMB, right, the only organic search is that little website thing, right? You click on website and it takes you to that. It's paid for. Now Google's announced that they're doing these like enhanced listings. I envision that that's going to be a sponsored listing, just like TripAdvisor business listing. How long before you think there's no organic left in GMB?
Well, it used to be a thing. Like, I mean, Lauren, you can probably speak to this a million years ago. And I used to love running these AdWords Express campaigns.
I was the one that overbooked Mary and David.
You remember when you could run? I know. You remember when you could run AdWords Express and you could have the little blue promoted pin on your map listing? That was money back then. That was easy.
It was money.
That was easy. You would have like 20 red pins on your map, and then there's a little blue one for your hotel.
Yeah, I would go to say that I think that the direction of this is going to go into your enhanced when you have your extra links, Dan, underneath of who you are, and you have those extra links that this is my booking, this is my about, this is my I think Google is ripened to the point that giving that away now and people getting used to it is now a time to monetize it. I think what's going to happen is either they're going to expand that functionality and or limit what you have organically and make you pay for what you want to add to it, and give you some control over where you want to put those things in a little bit more so, or increase the value of the amount of content or something. But yeah, I think that's probably more so where that might be going. I think out of legitimacy, they can't take everything away. They can take some away from that on the side, because I think people are going to say, wait a minute, the only reason why I'm getting this stuff is because somebody's paid for it. They're not necessarily what is the result of what I'm searching for. So I think back to their guest-centric or user-centric persona, I think they'll keep a predominant amount or just enough, to Dan's point, in the algorithm for them to make money.
The only thing from doing it is antitrust fears.
Yeah.
I don't think they could do it tomorrow. They can turn it on, but they're fearing antitrust.
And to Dan, to your question about would they ever make you pay for those other links in there, keep in mind that I believe personally that's one of the reasons that led to the demise of TripAdvisor a little bit, is they started trying to monetize every little piece of the page on there, and hotels just got annoyed by it. So I think there is a
lack of confidence too, from the user.
Yeah, exactly.
You give me a shitty hotel,
I think
put it on top. That's bad.
I think the really difficult thing that challenged TripAdvisor's success is when they change to best for you, best value, best this, best that, and not just a regular listing of the ratings, because it was the purity of, here is what the consensus is of the public who stayed there and wrote reviews. That was the beauty of TripAdvisor. That's what made it different from every other thing. And when you try to guess, well, I saw you looking at a Marriott hotel once, so now I'm just going to have only Marriott hotels come up for you in the beginning. Isn't that swell, Adele? No.
Well, they changed the UX.
I was going to. That's why I went there,
They changed the UX to the point where it was impossible. It was like difficult to find reviews, which is why anybody ever went there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
And then people end up having more reviews than they do.
Yeah.
Google's eating their lunch now.
So, well, we're coming to the bottom of the hour for the 2 hours, which is always fun to see just blow by like that, because that was an awesome. Thank you both, Stephanie and Dean, for the points, because I think it was great. Go ahead, Dean. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to add in before we close off. I wanted to backtrack to one of the things that we were talking about earlier. I often hear people talk about they can't compute the OTAs on their meta-search listings, by the way, and that is absolutely not true. And you have to remember, first of all, that the OTAs have a much different objective than you do. They're marketing to every hotel in the city, and they want to see Booking.com coming up again and again and again. The other thing, remember, is too, I talked earlier about the Google audiences. They don't have your audience. They certainly have their own. Don't get me wrong, they're doing this too, but they don't have yours. So I'm going to do a shameless self-promotion here and drop one of my
like that
here. Did that copy in right? There we go. Anyway, I wrote a blog about how to compete with the OTAs on your meta-search campaign, so you can see the link there.
But again, going back to some of this with Stephanie and Dean, I think that Stephanie made some excellent points within the article, and it really is a matter of metrics. It's a matter of how many tools are you using in combination or allowed to use, what your budgeting is, what your purpose of getting into it is. And I think those points were exceptionally done in your article. And Dean, also to your points as to the usabilities of some things. So it's like the nice happy blend where you think it's like no, yes, but actually it's more like yes.
Depends.
Way more gray than that. It's way more.
Yeah, the gray zone. What do you know?
Yeah.
But
And I did have a little bit of a clickbaity title, so I apologize for that.
What got my attention?
It worked, didn't it?
Rich, since you're our newest guest to the show, thank you so very much for having joined us in person rather than always, as you've been historically been in the attendees forum, which we sincerely appreciate as well. We hope to have you back as many times as you're willing to come back
Thank
and
you.
put up with us. If most people don't know what you're currently doing now, so if you're interested in letting anybody know how to reach out to you or what it is that you do, please by all means let everyone know. What is it that for our
It's sort of my email is my last name and the word consulting. So farrarconsulting@gmail.com. I also have a website, but farrarconsulting@gmail.com. You can get a hold of me, and I do a lot of hotel consulting, hotel hospitality, mostly with revenue challenged assets.
He does an exceptional job at it. Rich, as I said earlier in the show, Rich, I've had the pleasure of knowing Richard for many
There's
years.
a lot of those assets available now, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Dan, it says, I mean, now that you're going to be out of quarantine, we lose you again for another 6 months? Is that what's going to happen?
I think so. I may try to dial in again from Honolulu. I am here Friday, but I have to see if I can make it between my flight back and next Friday, but I will try.
Are you going to stay in New York for a little bit longer after quarantine because your son in college?
Yeah, I'm officially out this weekend, so I'm done quarantining.
Yeah.
So,
Are you going to try to get out and about a little bit, or are you just pretty much just hop into another hotel before you leave, or what do you think?
I'm going to check into a hotel. Haven't booked it yet, so looking around, and then going to hang out for a few days, catch up with friends and family, and then see what New York is like in COVID world, and then head back on next Friday.
Yeah. Now, if they want to know more about what it is that you do, I mean, I've gotten used to you being on the show for 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to miss you not being on the show again. But for what it is that you do and everything, and the training that you do with HSMAI and everything, where can they find you?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on my LinkedIn, just my name, Dan Waxman, or my website, sasato.com, SASSATO.com. One plug I'd like to make: we have Holly Zoba and I teach a hotel digital marketing essentials course for HSMAI. We have the last one of the year coming up on September 14th. We have a few slots available, so if anybody's interested, please go to the HSMAI website and you can find us there.
And we miss Holly too, and I know she's been busy, which is why she hasn't been able to be on the show with us for a while. But Holly was one of the original people that were on the show with us for many, many years, and she is brilliant, as she is talented, and she's an excellent. She also has her own program, which is Influencer Sales, which teaches sales training to salespeople and beyond. Really, it's not just salespeople; it's people that want to know sales for hospitality in particular and methodologies and so forth. She does a fantastic job of that. She used to be the senior vice president of Signature Series, and she had been doing that for many, many years too as well. Dean, where you got a couple things going on, but yes, Mr. MetaSearch.
Sure. So we've got actually two websites you can look at. One of them is basecampmeta.com. The other one is metasearchmarketing.com. And really the difference between the two of them is one of them is focused on training materials. Ironically, actually, we're also working with Holly Zoba and possibly developing something for HSMAI about MetaSearch. So that's a work in progress. And then metasearchmarketing.com is all about helping you actually run those programs, run those campaigns. And as you alluded to earlier, actually, I've been doing some research on that to find a solution for kind of the missing link. You get a lot of these small properties that are often ignored by the big players out there, whether it be the Cody's, Kirby's, Whips of the world, and any number of other vendors, not picking on anybody. And finding a plug and play solution that can get them connected to Google Meta. I've been doing a lot of research for that. I think I found a solution. So reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk.
Yep. And by the way, you sound like Mondo when they were doing the time warp on the last Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2 when they were bouncing around and their faces were all distorted. You sound like Mondo in the middle of that. That's what it was. Anyway. That's what it was. Yeah. Stephanie, if people want to know about Cogwheel Marketing, what it is that you do, and to get in contact with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at cogwheelmarketing.com. You can on LinkedIn, Stephanie Sparks Smith, where we do marketing for branded hotels.
Adele, since I could never get your company right at the beginning, and I am so sorry, I was distracted with technology, and I can't do two things at once. If I chew bubblegum, I stand still. So just know that that's what happened.
You can reach me at Adele, spelled like the singer, ADELE, at aspirereputation.com. And my website is aspirereputationmarketing.com. And, I guess if it was easy to have 96.1% guest satisfaction, everybody would do it. But I seem to have a knack for this thing, and I would love to share it with you. So if you need any help becoming a hotel that attracts business to you because of your outstanding reviews, reach out to me.
I think it's more than a knack. I think it's a gift, but that's just me. Keeping the top 4 hotels in New York and TripAdvisor is not a knack. That's a gift. I want to make sure that we didn't miss the people that had to drop off early for us. Obviously, we saw Trist and Ben from 3 and 6 Agency. That's 3 and 6 as in spelled out. They're based over across the pond in England, Northern England to be exact. And they are digital without the, what did he say? Digital without the distrust. They have a great slogan. I never.
Dishonesty.
Dishonesty. Thank you. Yeah. They're very truthful about what they do, and they do an exceptionally excellent job to that. I also want to refer out to Stuart Butler with with Fuel Travel. They are probably going to be on the show next week to discuss their latest findings, because obviously they're accumulating them now. We've always we've always been having the privilege to have them come on to review those numbers. As consumer sentiment through the entire process of COVID right now, this whole year. So we're going to be interested in those numbers when they can come through. Also with us was Mr. Edward Finance from Flip2, which is an advocacy-based platform that is exceptionally excellent in creating the relationship with your guests. Kind of in the vein with what Adele, where it's guest-centric and following the relationship building. So if you want to find this show and all previous 264 of them, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for show 265 there, the show notes, the links, and Robert Cole's well-curated list. We only hit a couple of topics on today, but thank you, Robert, all the same for getting it to us for us to be able to use. And there's great content to it. If you want to sign up for his newsletter, you can go to bit.ly/Rock Cheetah, all lowercase, no space. It's an incredibly excellent list. Well worth the read every week as he pushes it out, because it is the latest information what's going on in the industry that can affect your hospitality business. And don't forget our podcast, which is Hospitality Marketing Podcast. You can find that on 39 channels. There's 17 countries for it, and 5,000 people. You also do it on Alexa, Siri, and on Google. You can tell them to play the Hospitality Marketing Podcast. We are going to be translating this, as we always do, into 11 languages. We're going to keep Romanian on because of our last week's guest. An audience. We're going to put Romanian back in as a language of translation, so you'll be able to hear us all talk in Romanian. No, it'll be closed captioned. But anyway, so next week we'll go probably through Fuel Travel's numbers. We also have the potential of a guest co-host from GetGo. We're going to get that confirmed potentially. And thank you everyone for their time today. Richard, again, thank you for making the leap over from the peanut gallery to the live side of it. And we hope to see everyone 11:30 Eastern U.S. time next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.